Jill. Nice to
Hello.
meet you.
Thanks for having me, Connie. It's a pleasure to be here. And the last several speakers have been such an inspiration. So tough acts to follow, but again, very happy to be chatting about some of the work that I've done along with the Open Money Initiative. Let me see if I can pull up the
Wonderful.
slides that I have here.
Thank you while you're doing that. Contrary to a lot of my other introductions, our speaker here, Jill, is someone I haven't known very long, but I would absolutely love to get to know better. I very much admire her and her work. It's an honor to have her here. Jill Carlson is the principal at Slow Ventures and also the co-founder at Open Money Initiative. Open Money Initiative is a unique nonprofit organization that conducts research, builds technology, and creates tools to ensure access for all to a free and open financial system. Jill's here today, as she mentioned, to share her work with Open Money Initiative to understand the role that cryptocurrency can play in closed economies and collapsing financial systems. So very, very unique topic. I don't know anyone else who could speak on this, certainly not as well as you can. So thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having me. And yeah, certainly kind of a mutual admiration society here. I mean, I remember when I was first getting into the industry formally and learning about BitGive and your work, Connie, and I think that it's really informed a lot of the lens through which I've attempted to work in this industry. So thank you for that. It's great to finally connect. So again, Jill Carlson, I am, as Connie kindly introduced, a co-founder of an organization called the Open Money Initiative. And really at the heart of what we believe is that access to a free and open financial system is a basic human right. And this is not something that often gets framed this way or talked about this way. If you read sort of the Human Rights Declaration or think about the way that we talk about, free speech or freedom of religion, we don't often conceive of financial freedom as being in the same sort of category. But, we at the Open Money Initiative, and I think that this is shared across a lot of folks working in crypto, really believe that there is a category here. So again, today I'll talk a little bit about the organization itself, sort of how we got started, and then give a few examples of the type of work that we do and the types of situations that we look at, and hopefully that will be illuminating. So let me see if I can switch sides. So I'd like to start by taking us back in time a little bit. So this picture is a picture of me looking very overwhelmed and slightly disgruntled at a crypto conference from back in 2017, along with my friend Adam here. And I think the Decred mascot is what's going on in the middle. And, as I say, I was very overwhelmed. 2017 was sort of the peak of crypto hype. Prices were going bonanzas, off the charts, making today's Bitcoin rally sort of pale in comparison. And the ethos and the vibe was basically this, everyone is getting hilariously rich. And for myself, and I think for many others in the space, probably many of you on this call and in the room here, it was really kind of a moment of reckoning of like, what are we all doing here? There's so much promise that this technology has, but that's not necessarily getting delivered on in sort of the hype of the industry, at least at that point in time. And so again, that experience of being at this conference and this sort of ethos of it being just all about sort of the Lambos and the money and the number going up really caused me and a few of my close colleagues and friends to take a step back and ask ourselves, what is this actually about? And in doing so, we returned to kind of the words of Satoshi Nakamoto. We went back and sort of tried to rethink Bitcoin from first principles. And one of the things that we came back to was actually this quote, which Satoshi, of course, the creator of Bitcoin, said in one of his early emails to the distribution list, on which he initially introduced the Bitcoin white paper. And it's the following. So one of the people who was engaging with him on the idea of Bitcoin said to him, you will not find a solution to political problems in cryptography. And here Satoshi, legendary Satoshi, replies, yes, but we can win a major battle in the arms race and gain a new territory of freedom. And that really resonated with me and stuck with me and brought me back to some of the ideas that I had originally gotten into the space with, this idea that cryptography, cryptocurrency, this technology can really be a territory of freedom for people who are denied, again, that fundamental human right of economic and financial freedom. And so that led us to the question of, firstly, how might we find ways to make cryptocurrency useful to people in these situations? So specifically in closed economies and in collapsing monetary systems. And very quickly, we all kind of realized, well, wait, this is not quite the right question. This is a very self-serving framing. It's not actually about cryptocurrency. It's rather about how might we serve people in closed economies and collapsing monetary systems. And if cryptocurrency is a part of that, that's great. But let's go into this sort of with a very open mind, get a better understanding of what the problems are on the ground in places that have closed economic policies, that have collapsing monetary systems, where the financial system, for whatever reason, is failing its people and denying them kind of that fundamental right. And again, the hypothesis, of course, was that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency can play a role in that. But again, really wanting to be sort of open-minded about how technology in general plays a role in that, how people are solving these problems and approaching these issues today, even maybe without access to these types of things. And so with all of this, out of sort of the hype bubble and our own sort of existential crises of 2017, the Open Money Initiative was born, and it's a small band of us. We're very mission driven. Most of us come from sort of technology backgrounds, whether that's on the product side or the engineering side, or even kind of the go-to-market and strategy side, which is very much my background. Many of us in our ranks are more kind of full-time activists. We partner closely with the Human Rights Foundation, for example. I guess I kind of moonlight as an activist in this sense. And then we also come at it from very kind of design-oriented perspective, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. And again, the mandate here is really to find opportunities to serve those who don't have access to this free and open financial system. And so, to speak to that kind of design element in our approach, a lot of people ask me, oh, so, are you doing sort of academic research? Can you tell me, what % of people in Venezuela use Bitcoin or this type of thing? And that's all very important, and I think very fascinating. The academic in me loves that type of line of thinking and line of research. But what we do is quite different, and the reason for that is that we want it to be biased towards being actionable, if you will. And so, we look less for statistics, what is this sort of statistical significant, number here? What is the average person doing? What is the mean doing? Often, in fact, we look for outliers, actually, of, oh, that's really interesting. This person is solving this problem in this really unique way, and how can we draw inspiration for that? And so it's less research in, again, the way that people often conceive of it, and much more search for inspiration, if you will. So, around products and solutions and so forth. So our approach is very much rooted in listening and observing, practicing this really kind of design thinking, and then having this very iterative process of going back and revisiting things and continuing to always learn as we go. How do we go about doing this research? It's a combination of everything that you see on the screen here, and then much, much more. So we conduct really in-depth sort of 2-hour-long interviews with people. We come up with what we call sacrificial concepts, or ideas around products or goods or services that people might be able to use in a given situation, or that we're seeing people using and then bringing them elsewhere. We conduct displacement experiments. So one example of this was with a group in Venezuela, which I mentioned briefly here. We gave people Bitcoin, and we challenged challenged them, hey, go spend this, or go find a way to use this, or, you know, can you even get yourself set up with the Bitcoin wallet? So displacing them from their sort of normal modes of operating and being able to learn from that and take that feedback, obviously, back to the community of builders that we work with. And then also we do sort of diary studies or longitudinal studies where we ask people to keep a diary effectively of their day-to-day life and share it with us. And so it's been a huge privilege to be able to work with people in countries all around the world that are experiencing these types of challenges that I mentioned. So these are everything from inflation to capital controls, to, you know, bank withdrawal limits, to inability to accept remittances or to send remittances out of the country, you know, issues even with emigrating. You know, we talked to a lot of people who were trying to leave whatever country they were in, but were, you know, facing the challenge of being able to then take their wealth with them. So all types of issues as it relates to, again, being in sort of a closed economic system. And so Venezuela, which you see here, is one of the places where we've spent a lot of time doing this type of research. And I'll give you a quick example of sort of one of the findings here. And I've of course drawn out the ones that relate most closely to cryptocurrency, but I think that they're really illustrative of the ways that cryptocurrency is being used and can be used. And so this was an engineering student who we spoke at length with. She's 22 years old. Her name is Ana Maria, and she lives in the capital of Venezuela. And she explained to us that she and her boyfriend had bought Bitcoin mining machines several years prior. And, you know, at first it was just kind of a hobby and a little bit of extra money, but now it's actually become her family's primary source of income. And in Venezuela, it's because it's a petro state, because it's an economy that's highly dependent on oil. It's actually quite reasonable for them to be able to run these Bitcoin mining machines at a profit, because energy is so deeply subsidized by the government. And so Ana Maria runs these Bitcoin mining machines in her basement, and then she uses a service called Local Bitcoins, which many of you may be familiar with, to change those Bitcoins into local currency, basically on an as-needed basis. You know, when her mom goes out to do the shopping, she'll change some of the Bitcoins over, but otherwise, she'll often hold it in Bitcoin. And so, you know, there not only is she deriving a source of income that she wouldn't otherwise have, but she's also found a way to fight inflation and hedge herself against inflation via holding her money in Bitcoin. And so that's Venezuela. Happy to speak more to that. Again, I've spent a lot of time thinking and working on that as a case study in particular, and just really incredible, inspirational people who have found just the most creative ways to often not only survive. You know, I think that it's very easy when talking about these places to think, you know, oh, this is sort of a charity case, but in many cases, actually, people are also thriving because of the creativity that they've been able to bring to the table. And again, often that intersects with technology. So the next little case study that I'll share is that of Nigeria. So for those of you who've been following the news over the last couple of months, you may be aware of this, but Nigeria has been experiencing of late really escalated civil unrest related to government corruption and in particular related to police brutality. And there are several activist groups there that found themselves suddenly basically shut out of the financial system, you know, unable to raise funds in the way that they wanted to, unable to receive funds in the way that they wanted to, unsurprisingly, perhaps because they are dissident groups. And one really incredible and cool outcome of this has been just sort of the technological savvy that we've seen groups get up the learning curve on very, very quickly in order to overcome this. And so this is a screenshot of the Instagram page of the Feminist Coalition, which is one of these groups in Nigeria. And as you can see, they, for a period of time, moved to only accept donations in Bitcoin using the BTC Pay server, which is a very cool product. If you're not familiar with it, go and check it out. And you know, this is the individual who posted this on Instagram. She was not sort of, you know, someone who is deeply embedded in the Bitcoin community prior to any of this. But, you know, here you can see in action the very fact that the BTC Pay server is free, secure, decentralized, and censorship resistant is actually what makes it useful to her in her country when she finds herself facing censorship at the financial level. And the third example that I'll give very quickly is that of Lebanon, which has experienced real kind of financial volatility and turmoil, again, just over the last year or so. And, you know, has dealt with everything from sort of bank runs and liquidity crises to withdrawal limits, et cetera. And, you know, here I'll point to Lee Quinn, who is a good friend. She's a journalist. She's a researcher. I would strongly encourage you to check out her work. But, you know, one of her findings within Lebanon is that social networks have essentially become grassroots financial networks. And so here, you know, this insight, it's related to Bitcoin because often these social networks like WhatsApp and Facebook groups, they're being used to buy, sell, and exchange Bitcoin across borders. But this, I think, is also a really great example of how sort of technology as a whole and the web of technologies that are now available basically globally can kind of come together and work together and knit together in order to create, as Lee very well puts it, a grassroots financial network. And so, you know, whether it's Anna Maria in Caracas, you know, using Bitcoin mining, whether it's, you know, the Feminist Coalition in Nigeria using the BTC Pay server to raise money, or whether it's, you know, just individuals in Lebanon coordinating via WhatsApp in order to move Bitcoin and move money between themselves. It's a real inspiration to see how people are really using this technology in action on the ground in these closed economies and financial systems. And so I'll stop there. I'll pause there. I think I'm already running over time, but there's so much to share. As you can tell, I'm very excited and passionate about all of this. You know, I think that a couple of the big takeaways are just that, you know, none of this is happening really at scale yet. You know, I would be remiss if I made it seem to you as though, you know, everyone in Venezuela was using Bitcoin or mining Bitcoin. That's not at all the case. But I think that one of the big takeaways that I want to emphasize is that crypto is being used in action on the ground in these very sort of mission-oriented ways. And that's very exciting and should be a source of inspiration as we continue to build out this industry. So thank you.
Absolutely. I couldn't say it better myself. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. It's such a really unique view on the role of cryptocurrency in closed economies and in collapsing financial systems. I think perhaps like the headlines and the talking heads, they like to talk to and point to this issue, but the work you're doing and have done is really actually diving into it in the real world and gathering real information and real experiences. And that's where it's really at. We're not making any difference if we're just talking about it to the press and pointing fingers at, you know, countries that have these kinds of economies. We're learning and growing from the work you're doing, and I think that that's what really matters. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me on to share it.
Absolutely, it's a true honor. I don't see that we have any questions, but just wanted to ask before we have about 1 minute before we can transition to our last panel of the day. So last call, if anyone has questions for Jill. I'm surprised because it's such amazing work, but I think it's probably also quite, it's quite deep to absorb. And
yeah. Find me on Twitter if you have questions. I spend way too much time on that website. So.
Definitely people should look up your work, follow you. She's quite entertaining on Twitter as well. So thank you so much, Jill.